3 ACT exam myths. So these are 3 persistent myths that I run into with my students, with parents, with people on the internet, is things about the ACT. Now, if you don't really know, the ACT is basically a standardized test, right? And whatever you feel about standardized tests, it's a thing that virtually all high schoolers end up taking, and usually are used for college admissions and scholarships. And, if you're going to attend community college, if you want to do concurrent enrollment, lots of these things come from the ACT. So just want to talk a little bit today about these 3 myths and see if we can't help give you some ideas about how you want to spend your time. So the first one is people who call me and say, my student, I have good grades. I should do fine on the ACT, or why am I not doing well on the ACT? And the reason is the way grades work at school and the way that the standardized tests work are really different animals. And again, for better or for worse, they're just not the same thing. So like when you're doing grades at school, a lot of this is longer term learning, often with writing component, attending class, and you have a lot of time to work on things. So if you're going to be writing a paper, if you're working on your grammar, you also might have, the ability to use autocorrect, if you use Google Documents or something to do some writing. All of that is in play, and you can use that when you're doing your grades. Same thing with math, is if you can look up things as you go, it may be that you can do the work, but you can't do it when you have it just thrown at you, right? Here, go and do this. And the ACT is very much focused on-demand recall of information that you've been working on. So specifically, like say on the math test, you have to not only be able to factor a quadratic, you have to be able to remember that formula, know how to do it, and do it fairly quickly on demand. And that's a separate skill. So for many people, even if you've got really good grades, and even if you've got a certain score on the ACT, raising that score, doing some work, spending some time and funds and resources on doing that can often be the best investment you can make, especially if you're talking scholarships, you're talking attending a certain school that you want to go to. There's a lot of good things here. So just keep in mind, just because you have good grades doesn't mean you're going to do great on the ACT. Some people may do better on the ACT than they do on their grades. It is a different skill set. It is measuring different things, for better or for worse. Now, this next one is what most people do. He said that I can just practice and improve on my own. This is definitely true on the one hand that, yes, could you practice and can you get better? Yes, of course. If you practice anything, if you practice lifting weights, if you practice kicking a soccer ball, you're going to get better at it. But like so many things, if you want to get a lot better at it, if you really want to improve, one of the best things you can do is to get a coach, right? Is to get someone who can guide you on where you're going, right? If you want to get in great shape, you can just start lifting weights at home and doing squats. You absolutely can, and you can do it. But you could also join a gym, right? You could go to Planet Fitness and you could do that, and you could do a totally self-directed thing. Well, that might be a little better because now you've got the right tools and you've got a really good environment to do that work. But the way to get the best results and the way to get them to last the longest and get the results you want is probably to get a personal trainer, is to have somebody who understands your needs and your directive. And what is it you're trying to do? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to increase your muscle mass? It's the same idea with working on the ACT or any kind of test prep situation. What are you working on improving? How do you want to get there? What do you want to be looking at? And how can you get there over time? So think of a tutor specifically as being like a personal trainer. They're there to challenge you, to get to know you, to help you get to the best version of yourself. And it's not that you couldn't do it on your own. It's that, could you do it faster? Could you do it with less amount of time and less amount of overall pain? If it takes 5 hours of work on your own or 1 hour with somebody who really knows what they're doing, maybe that's worth doing for you. So while you can do this, for many people, just working and practicing and practicing and practicing without any direction, without any guidance from somebody who really knows what they're doing, you're just really not going to be satisfied with where you get. And the third one, and this is a newer one, right? This is a big thing with the aftermath of the COVID-19 situation, although obviously we're still dealing with some of that now, is the ACT doesn't really matter anymore. Is colleges make it optional. This is true. What really happened in 2020 right, is the ACT is always done in person because they're concerned about cheating and things of this nature. Well, if you can't give the ACT because of a global pandemic, well, then you kind of have to make it optional. I think also there's some recognition, as we talked about, the ACT is not necessarily the best indicator of, your knowledge base as a person. It is an indicator. It's not the every indicator. But it's one of these things that, okay, but you look at these colleges that are going test optional, and many are. This means to attend that university or that college, you don't have to take a standardized test. You don't have to take the ACT or the SAT. You can get it on grades or recommendations or whatever it is you need. That's great. You should definitely leverage that if you're going to use that. But I will tell you, every significant scholarship that I see has a standardized test score attached to it. So you're thinking, your chancellor scholarships, your governor scholars, your various things that you want to get access to. Those things are worth often a lot of money. And many times, and this is something we'll have on another talk, is there are so many scholarships that just don't get taken because there's not enough people applying for them, especially these smaller level scholarships. But many of them have a test ranking on them because they need some way to gauge, the quality of the student they're working with. Again, may or may not be a good gauge, but that is what it is. So what I would tell you is if you are trying to go to a more elite university, not the local community college or maybe the local university or college, those are great. You should go to those. That's great. If you're trying to go somewhere out of state, for example, you almost certainly are going to need a strong ACT score if you don't want to be paying full price for it. So beyond admission is getting scholarships, getting, out-of-state fees waived, things of this nature. And especially if you are going for significant scholarships, say the Governor Scholar here in Arkansas, that usually requires a 32. We've kind of talked about that a 1-point improvement. If you've got a 31 and you can go to a 32, that is worth tens of thousands of dollars, that 1 point. For many people, if that's where you are, that's worth doing. In the same way that there are break points on the ACT that it's worth doing. But here's the thing, just because it's optional doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, that it doesn't have any value. So keep that in mind. There are lots of things that are optional, right? I mean, chocolate ice cream is optional. Pizza is optional. You don't need it, but you want to have that because it can improve your life, give you what you want to go. The whole point of an ACT is not necessarily because it's delicious. It's because it allows you to go where you want to go. And we'd like to help you with that.